Hi there, welcome to another episode of Witchfinder's Gaming Vault, and today I'm going to be looking at an Atari 2600 game. That game is Commando Raid. As you can see, I only have a cartridge for it, no packaging, much like most of my Atari 2600 games. So let's take a look at the fact file for this one. Commando Raid was released in 1982 and this is the US version. The game wasn't released officially in Europe, I don't think. There seems to be a bootleg Italian version available if you look on eBay, but no official European release that I'm aware of. The game was published by US Games and developed by Witchfinder Design. The price I paid for the game was £4, and the current going rate, it is quite hard to find in the UK as you'd expect as a US only game. You can expect to pay £10 plus for it for a loose cartridge and £20 plus for a box copy. So this game is exclusive to Atari 2600, so let's take a look at it and see if it's any good. So before I fire this game up, let's just take a closer look at the cartridge because it is quite a nice design. Got the US Games logo and the name of the game there, quite like the font on that. There's a mock screenshot there. It's not a real screenshot, it's kind of mocked up by the graphic designer. It says see instructions for details, use with the left joystick controller, and you can see some copyright information at the bottom there. And again, it's got the logo for the game on the end there. So yeah, quite a striking design. I don't think there were many games released by US Games, but this one at least looks quite nice presentation wise. Let's plug it in now and see if it's actually any good as a game. So I've plugged the cartridge in and here's the game as you'd expect with an Atari 2600 game. No title screen or anything like that. We go straight into the game screen and as you can see we're on a sort of black landscape with some buildings on it, and I'm going to be controlling this little gun turret in the middle there, and we've got a pretty nice interpretation of a kind of a sunset sky in the background there. So you've got the greens and pinks and oranges of a sunset, so I think that's quite nicely done. There's also a 0 near the top of the screen, which is the score readout, and two odd black lines top left there. I'm not really sure why they're there, probably just not very good programming is my guess. So not much more to say about it. I may as well just get on and actually play the game. So to start the game, and this took me a while to work out, with most Atari games you usually press reset to start the game, but in this case you push up on the joystick and the game starts, so that's what I'll do. And you also have to fire a bullet before anything starts as well. So yeah, the idea of the game is that there's commandos raiding you, unsurprisingly, based on the name, and they drop out of these helicopters that are flying over, and you have to shoot them before they reach the buildings. And when they reach the buildings, things happen, which I'm not going to go into at this point. You'll see it as game progresses. You can also shoot the helicopters, which I'm going to try and do. You can hold down the fire button and you get a pretty good rate of fire when you do so. It's just left and right controls on the gun turret to move the turret, rotate it around 180 degrees roughly. There is a point at which they get past you and you can't shoot them. As you can see, that's as far as I get. So I've completed the first stage and now I've got green paratroopers coming after me instead of the ones that were white in the first round. So the helicopters stay the same. So I think if you shoot the helicopters they will just disappear and not come back and drop more paratroopers, so you can reduce the number of paratroopers that are dropping by shooting the helicopters as soon as you can. But of course to do that you've got to point up the screen, and meanwhile they're dropping them down the screen trying to get them into the buildings. Now as you can see now, as the buildings get destroyed, eventually the paratroopers can start burrowing under the ground towards you, and you've only got one life. And basically what they're going to do is, as they make the progress under the ground, eventually they'll get underneath the turret and blow it up, and that'll be game over. You do get every 10,000 points not an extra life, but one of the buildings gets restored so that they have to break through it again. So yeah, that helps. So at some point you have to decide which side you're going to focus on, because obviously you can see that the troopers are burrowing their way down through the ground from multiple directions now, so it is just a matter of time before I get killed. So yeah, they're getting, there we go, one of them's come down and dropped a bomb underneath me and blown me up. A nice flashy explosion of the ground, and the rest of them then come down as well for no obvious reason other than the game cycle's not finished yet, and that's game over. And that's all it is. It's a pretty simplistic game, but pretty decent as well. I think it's pretty nicely implemented. Let's have another go. So same again, I'm just going to try a bit harder not to get let the paratroopers get in. I think really that's got to be the focus. Ignore the helicopters for the most part and just try and shoot the troops coming down. The longer that lasts, the longer you last without any of them getting through, the longer the game's going to last. So the helicopters you're going to get points for, but apart from stopping them dropping the troopers, which is quite hard to do anyway, there's not a lot of benefit in it. Graphically, well, you know, it's an Atari 2600 game. What do you expect? I would say that the little paratroopers are reasonably nicely drawn. The helicopters they come across, they're obviously just a single colour, but the animation of the rotors is quite nicely done as well. So overall, I don't think the graphics are too bad. You know what you're going to get, very simplistic, blocky graphics on the 2600, but they're not too bad. And sound effects wise, again, the sound of the helicopters pretty nicely done. Otherwise, it's just sort of shooting bullet noises and blips and stuff like that. But I would say the helicopter rotor noise is quite nicely implemented. So overall, I would say it's pretty nicely programmed for an Atari game. One of the later era ones, I suppose you could say. By the time you get to 1982, you know, the better games for the system were coming out, the likes of Pitfall and River Raid and things like that. So you'd expect it to be higher quality than some of those earlier games. So I'm not doing too badly so far. We've got on the right hand side a little bit of a burrow starting, but overall I'm not doing too badly. But I think you can see I haven't got anywhere near as high a score as I got before because I haven't shot as many helicopters, and that's kind of the twist. Is if you want the higher score, you need to shoot the helicopters, but you also need to focus on always taking out the troopers dropping down. It is nice that you can hold down the fire button for auto fire. That's a nice touch which you wouldn't have got in a lot of Atari games, I don't think. So overall I think it's a pretty nicely implemented game. Never really heard of it or played it before. I just bought this cartridge. I think I bought it off somebody actually on a whim really, because it looked like quite an interesting game with the sunset, and yeah, it's not too bad. I'm doing alright. I'm doing better than I did the first time around, but I've got a lower score up to yet. But I'm now on level 4, now on red paratroopers dropping down. I don't think there's any difference. I think perhaps the rate that they're dropping them is a little bit faster. I guess that's it. I think eventually you just face insurmountable odds of all these things dropping down, and I only need to focus on the right hand side for the time being now to stop the ones dropping down to get through this tunnel. But then of course as soon as I start doing that, they're going to start getting on the other side, so it is just a case of moving backwards and forwards and shooting. There are some other options in terms of settings for this game, so I'm going to play one more round after this one, which isn't going to last much longer. Ooh, just made it to 20,000, and that's actually restored that house on the right hand side there. So that gives me a bit of a respite on that side now until they destroy that one again. But yeah, one more miss now and they're going to get me. Yeah, there's some other settings which is set by the 2 difficulty switches, and also oddly the colour and black and white switch is an auto fire switch. So if you switch it to black and white, it auto fires without even having to hold the button down. But to be honest, holding the button down is not a big chore anyway. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I think this is going to be it now. Yeah, here we go. Not bad though. I certainly did better than my first go and got 24,000 points. So yeah, what I'm going to do is change some of the settings, because there's a couple of different settings. I'm going to switch from all the default ones, which is the ones I'm on now, to all the other settings that are the other options basically, and switch them all on so you can see the other different options that you can play when you're playing the game. Okay, so here we are. I've switched all the difficulty options to the other options, the other settings, so that's both difficulty switches are now set to B. I've left the auto fire off. I mean, I can switch it on, but there's not a lot of point. I can do that by holding the button down anyway, as you've already seen. So I'm going to start the game, and the first thing you'll notice straight away is that you can now bend your bullets. I don't know if this helps or hinders, it's just different. I think perhaps what you can do is fire at one point and then move towards the target, you know, with the bullet rather than the turret of the gun. So maybe it helps. I'm not entirely sure. I've played it a couple of times with both settings and I'm still not sure which one's better, but you do seem to be able to pick the enemies out. And this is the second thing, is you get this bomber flying over periodically, dropping a bomb, and if that bomb lands then it's game over. But from what I've seen so far with a quick playthrough before I started recording again, it's not that hard to hit the bomber, although I did miss it that first time, but I did hit the bomb. So if you've got plenty of time to hit the bomb if you don't hit the bomber before it unleashes the bomb. I said bomb a lot then. Let's just say bomb again. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, you still got the same problem that you can't hit the commandos when they get to below a certain threshold on the horizon. So you still have the same issues with the ones further out to the left and right being harder to hit. But yeah, maybe, here we go. Oh, I missed it again. Maybe the bendy bullets is a good thing. I'm still not sure. It's fun though to just like move them around like this. So on to level 3, or wave 3 I should say, eventually. Oh, there we go, finally hit the bomber. So yeah, it does add an extra level of difficulty, but not a huge amount, I have to say. I don't think it makes the game much harder having that bomber flying over. It's just another thing to, I guess the main thing is it'll just distract you from shooting the commandos periodically. Okay, so we've got them starting to burrow through again. I'm a long way off the 20,000 points for... Oh, there we go. Not so far off it now though. Definitely shooting the copters seems to be easier to do and less sort of difficult to get to them by wiggling the bullets around. There is a bit of a wait between phases, which I suppose is okay as a kind of a respite, but it's also a bit boring to have to wait. But overall I think the game's quite nicely programmed. It is a simplistic just gallery shooter, you know, there's not a huge amount going on. It's purely just a high score challenge obviously, and last as long as you can. But you know, as Atari games go, it's quite colourful, it's quite smoothly programmed, there's not a lot of flicker or anything like that. So overall I think it's pretty good. Definitely one I'm going to be keeping. It also seems to be quite rare as a UK purchase, at least it's quite hard to get hold of, so you know that gives it a little bit of kudos I suppose as well. So yeah, it's alright. I'm reasonably impressed by it, having only briefly played it for a second to check that it worked when I first got hold of it. So yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised by it, to be honest. It's reasonably playable, fairly addictive, and yeah, pretty well programmed. So I think this proves that the bendy bullets are better because I've got more points than I've got the last time already, and I'm on the same level as I was when I died last time. I think it's probably not going to last much longer. No, there we go, and just as I say that, there's the end of the game. So yeah, Commando Raid for the Atari 2600. Not a bad little game at all. I think I've quite enjoyed that. If you've got any thoughts about it, then let me know in the video comments. Well, that was quite a fun little game, and with that out of the way, it's time to pick another game out of the tin at random to review next time around. Let's see what comes out this time. And for the next review, it's going to be back to the Commodore 64, the trusty Commodore 64, and the game is Black Hornet. So join me for that next time around on Witchfinder's Gaming Vault. Thanks very much for watching this video. See you in the next one.